G'day, fans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of DNA Reviews as we tackle the third episode, the convert, as it were, of The Mandalorian. And boy, is there a lot to talk about in this particular episode. So we're not going to really dally about much. Mr. Aaron, how are you going this evening?
I'm going well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Oh, there's just so much to take on board for this this particular review. It's absolutely outstanding. So what we're looking at is the good old convert. We're just going to jump straight into it, because there was so much to cover off. And as always, in case you haven't figured it out, yes, there will be spoilers, which is very, very important because there's actually a lot to spoil for this particular thing. Now, as always, well, it hasn't happened for the past couple of weeks, but for this episode, I've had to break it up because the start of the show is with Din and Grogu and all those guys. And the last part of the episode is Din and Grogu and those guys. And in the middle, it's a completely different show. So I've stuck the two Mandalorian bits together just to make our lives a little easier. Because I think the second part is the bit that people are very, very keen to sort of discuss. So there you go. And we're going to welcome a new face to the crowd, Mr. Blake Edwards. He's actually my next door neighbour. So there you go. So if I speak loudly enough, he should be able to hear me live from his bedroom.
There you go. I thought it was the director of the Pink Panther who joined us.
That's exactly right. Very, very good. We love that joke. Anyway, there's a lot to cover off, and we're going to get right into it because I tell you what, when I came to picking out pictures for this episode, I was like, it was a mind spin. There was just so much to tackle on board. But we kicked off, as we saw at the end of the last episode, we've got old Bo's looking at the waters of the living waters, and she can clearly see, as we saw last week, the wheels are turning in her head. She's clearly ready to ride herself a realosaur, not a mythosaur, because it now exists. And I thought this was a really good way of starting this particular episode. It's just her and her thoughts. And, of course, straight after that, we realised that Din didn't get to see it. So only she knows it exists. What do you think of that?
I think after weeks and weeks, well, for all we know, years and years of sitting on the throne thinking about what she's going to do, the wheels have been turning for a long time. And an opportunity like this comes along and she's going to grab onto the mythosaur with both hands.
I thought it was so funny when you sit on the throne, you've got to clarify. Yeah, it's actually the castle throne. These days, thrones can mean one or two different things. So,
yeah,
I thought that was a... Sorry, go on.
I thought the way she approached the conversation with Din after it had all happened was very clever from her part because she was getting information but not saying anything suspicious either.
Yeah, and it also confirms that did not get pulled down under the water from the mythosaur. He actually fell. He just dropped like a stone. So, and I thought that was kind of good. So, yeah, she's asking him these leading questions. Did you see anything? Nah. It's like, oh, that's awesome. So you do wonder where that's going to lead.
Did you see there was a parallel to this to one of the episodes of, I think it was the Clone Wars, it could have been Rebels, with the Zilla Beast, where they said the bombing had made subsidence, so it was a lot deeper than they expected. Now that was what happened in that episode as well, where that beast came out from underneath one of the planets because the Imperials had bombed it.
Yeah, well, that's right. So clearly, it's safe to say that the mythosaur was buried under Mandalore, just snoring away like a smorg, from the Hobbit series. You've had all the bombing; it's been released. It's now a bit closer to the surface, and what everybody thought did not exist, we now discover it does exist. So I think that was kind of cool. So very, very groovy. So we get off Mandalore. There's a cute line here about the Bo would invite Din to a feast, but clearly that helmet is now welded on his head. He ain't taken it off again. I think this was a nice little moment, and it's good to see that they've taken R5D4 with him. So I thought that was pretty groovy. It was just a nice, cute little moment. But what she's saying is correct. He is definitely never going to remove that helmet ever again. So yes, very, very groovy. And that, of course, meant that we got into the TIE interceptor attack. And, of course, a few people, it's mentioned in the episode that clearly an Imperial warlord, right, wouldn't have this many ships. And there's a lot of theories going around as to whether it's Thrawn's fleet being an operative, whatever terminology you want to use, and that they're actually based on Mandalore. So when hiding on another side of the planet. So when Bo took off on her ship, they saw it happen. So that's the reason why they've given chase. That's the reason why they just didn't appear out of nowhere. I don't know if that's true. It's just pure speculation. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I did think when they said an Imperial warlord, it has to be leading maybe to the mid-season climax or the end of season reveal of Thrawn. I mean, they've mentioned him a couple of times now. He's almost conspicuous by his absence.
Yeah, and we discussed it, I think, in the first or second season, how Gideon was considered to be the main bad guy of the series. And even though they've dropped massive hints in Mandalorian that Thrawn exists, you go, well, okay, if you put the two of them side by side, clearly Gideon's just push him off to the side. Thrawn is the bad guy that everybody's sort of waiting for. And it was an interesting sort of line when they said, oh, this is more than a normal warlord would have. So if it is Thrawn's brood, it would be curious to see what he's got, how much he's got, and just how much influence he has over everything. Because in the end, he's attacking Bo-Katan. It's like, well, what do you get out of that? Really, nothing. So, yeah, interesting. But if they are based on the Mandalore planet, just on the other side, because remember, most people think Mandalore is poisoned. So you could build a base there and not be discovered by anybody. So in that regard, it's quite clever. So they would have seen the ship land on the other side, theoretically, and they go, what's the deal with that? Oh, it's Bo-Katan. Oh, yeah, she's been just hijacking all of our ships. We'll go and take her out. So, it was interesting. So, Christy said, if Thrawn is coming, will he bring Mara Jade? Well, poor old Mara Jade still has not been brought into canon after all these decades. And it's like the one character that all the fans have been waiting for. But as of today, she does not exist. So, and of course, in the Heir to the Empire series, she was the Emperor's hand. And that doesn't necessarily mean that would carry over to this. But we wait and see. So we have this enormous spaceship fight. It's all good. It's great. It's fantastic. TIE interceptors everywhere. Groovy. And I did like this. It was an action scene. It was a good action scene. It was very predictable because we know that Din and isn't going to get killed. And we know Bo-Katan is not going to get killed because she's got Grogu on board. But it was interesting to see that he channeled his inner Batman 89 when he flies up into the sky and then does like the stalling of the ship and it sort of drops back down to Earth. A few people have picked up on this. And did you have a bit of a melting heart moment when you saw this?
Yeah, this episode was actually one of the fullest of Easter eggs I think we've ever had. But I did think they did that on purpose as a homage to the shot from Batman for sure.
Yeah, they could have at least had like the Concordia moon or something in the background there just to sort of really sell it. But yeah, a few people went, "Oh my god, that's just unbelievable! That's really really cool." So it was a really good spaceship chase. You know, as we've said, we've seen them all before. They sort of come, they go, and it's all very good. A bit of action, a bit of excitement, and of course, this is the first time we've discovered that the whole TIE interceptor attack was a ploy to get Bo-Katan away from the castle. And of course, the TIE bombers come in and just blow it up. And I thought that was really groovy. And her reaction to it was really good. You remember when she's in the ship, she sees the smoke in the distance and, oh no, that was excellent. I mean, a few people have made a joke about the fact that her robot droid, her butler, he's probably carked it. But a few other people have suggested whether this would have been a Thrawn tactic. Attack her, get her away from the castle, blow up the castle. Clearly, they didn't want to destroy her in the castle. They could have waited for her to return. But, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I thought the whole attack was worthy of any Star Wars movie. The visuals were fantastic. I did notice when they attacked the castle, I don't know if we've seen it before, from one of the angles, her castle looked really like the Mandalorians' helmets as well. Did you pick up on that?
No, I didn't really sort of notice it. Yeah, okay.
And the other thing that I thought was really cool, on the displays and readouts on the spaceships, they've really done a good job in making it look halfway between A New Hope and halfway between the next trilogy. I don't know if you saw, you would have noticed that as well, I think. Yeah,
it's kind of funny after what we saw in Andor, where everything looked really 1970s. Now they're sort of upping the quality a little bit. So they've gone from Windows 3.1 to Windows 11, and effectively, and the digital readouts are a bit more funkier. So yeah, that's probably intentional because clearly with the sequel trilogy, they did sort of boost them up a little bit. So Bo-Katan's castle's been blown up, which is probably a good thing because all she was going to do is just go back and sit on the throne anyway and have a bit of grizzle. So fair enough. So good old Din says, I know where to go. We're just going to bugger off back to this place here, which we still don't know what the planet is called. And it is where our heroes are going to join the Children of the Watch. And this was at the end of the episode, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought, okay, what is going to happen here? And there's a lot to sort of digest from this whole sequence. Now, Paz Vizsla, and that's, I think, is how you pronounce his name, clearly isn't the happiest camper in the world to see them. And what's interesting is that I was wondering how everybody was going to react to Bo, because she is part or was part of the Imperial Mandalorian hierarchy in terms of governing the entire planet. And of course, whether he does, I mean, I was surprised he didn't recognize her to start with. But of course, she once supported Pre-Vizsla during the Clone Wars. So they sort of teamed up together when they were trying to get control of Mandalore. And of course, this then asks the question as to whether he's going to attempt to get the Darksaber back off Din now that they're all part of the one big happy family. So how'd you see all this?
I thought it was interesting. I guess we've skipped to the other end of the episode, and the name of the episode, I guess, is really relevant to what's happening here, isn't it? But it's relevant to both parts of the story as we
Yeah.
go through them, because I think the name is sort of a misdirection onto what's happening in the middle of the episode, and it comes back and swings round at the end.
Yeah, yeah, you are right. I mean, you are when you look at the name of the episode, you know who exactly you were referring to. So, I do. Someone else has pointed this out before, and I did look at it in this and go, oh, "Yeah, I see where they're coming from." It is like the Creed are channeling their inner Wiggles, all these wacky colours for these uniforms, and some people have said it's like a poor man's cosplay convention. Some of them do look a tad on the dodgy side. Eh? Don't have the Django Fett sort of really cool look anymore. They've just said, "Oh, we'll put in greens and blues and reds and golds and all that." And it's like I don't know. It doesn't really work for me. It doesn't. I mean, Boba Fett, the original Boba Fett, had all the colors, and it worked for him. But I don't know. For these guys, it just doesn't cut the mustard. And alongside that, people have said, okay, they don't take their helmets off. We get that. But what else do they do? We have not seen anything to do with their children or the Watchers' culture. What exactly do they get up to when they're just hanging around out in this cave? And I think that really needs to be addressed. So I don't know if you've thought about that at all.
I absolutely have, because I was thinking about the whole living waters thing. And in the last episode, in the first episode of the series, we saw the little boy who was joining and he was getting baptized in the waters there. So the whole thing has kind of changed, because you used to have to go to Mandalore, and they've sent the Mandalorian back to Mandalore to go to the living waters. But anyone else who wants to join, obviously, we saw in the book of Boba Fett, there was only a couple of them left. They've been dunking them in this other place. Do they all have to go back to Mandalore and join the through the living waters? Because it just seems a bit strange.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. If you're meant to be in the living waters and you're on a different planet and they just go into the local lake and they just, you drink this out of the thing, you go, well, it's kind of not really the same thing, is it? So, and it's one of those thoughts you go, okay, we get you're this sort of religious sort of cult of the Mandalorians. Yeah, all well and good. That's fantastic. But what do you do? Okay. What do you guys get up to? Do you sit around and do kumbaya sessions, or you pray to the mythosaur sort of statue on the wall thing? I mean, we may see it, but currently a lot of people are scratching their heads going, well, what do they get up to? So
the one thing we did see this episode where it does actually make a difference is when he gave her the waters and she tested it. It came up with energy, and she's like, oh yeah, these are the living waters. So there definitely is something in that water that's different. So,
which brings up this point. I was really surprised when she goes, oh, Din Djarin speaks the truth. He has been in the living waters. I thought, gee, she's taken it pretty calmly. I thought she was going to go, holy crap, he's been there, and you can go to the planet. It was like, you're a very relaxed lady when you get this like really, really sort of important news. Unless, as I suggested last week, she knew what Mandalore was really like. She just was putting on this act saying it's all poisoned and bombed to glass and all sort of business. So, but yeah. I thought, yeah, okay, she's being a bit calm and relaxed about it. Go, oh, okay, he has actually been there. It's like, damn, and clearly her bath is full of the living water. So make of that what you will. So yeah. A little bit. She's definitely composed. Maybe under the helmet she's like losing her mind, but she's just calm blue ocean.
And then I did think the Mandalorians' reaction was a bit strange too. It was like they all relaxed, were like high five and patting the backs kind of thing, which I thought would have been different. Not so much a rigid ceremony, more like a sort of sigh of relief and off we go again kind of thing.
Well, yeah, they've all been told for probably many, many years that Mandalore is a poisonous place. You can't go back there. Now Din has proven you can go back there. You think half of them would be going, oh, hang on, Armourer, you've been telling us all these porky pies. What's the deal with that? Right? Unless they're so wrapped up in where they are and what they're doing, they'll just go, you know what, we'll just shut our traps and be done with it. So it's a little bit inconsistent when you have one person who has just already proven that, yes, you can go to this place that we were told you can't go to. All of a sudden you expect half of them to just bugger off back home. But anyway, and alongside that, good old Bo, or the Armourer, doesn't really react to Bo because, once again, Bo was an important person in the Mandalorian hierarchy. And I thought the Armourer was going to turn around and go, holy shit, it's freaking Bo-Katan. No, doesn't do that either. I thought, okay, it's a bit calm, a bit subdued. I don't know if that necessarily works, but she's made a tough stuff, the Armourer, that's for sure. So
I know it is interesting. I do think that we're just accepting anyone at the moment because when the Mandalorian went into the living waters, he recited all the stuff that he had to be redeemed, and then she says to Bo, "Did you go in too?" She's like, "Yep." "Have you taken your helmet off?" "Nah." "Oh, you're one as well." I just
Yeah,
like,
no. Yeah. Instant initiation. It's like, crikey, is everybody going to the living waters now? He's been in, she's been in. It's like, yeah, lucky they didn't chuck the kid in. So,
yeah.
yes. Christy's asked, how much sedition did she need to cope with them all? I'll let you answer that because I'm not sure what the question is.
To cope with the war. I'm not sure what Christie's asking there really either
Okay.
as well.
Yeah, that's okay, not a problem. But you are right. So they've been to the place that when you thought you could never get to, and as you're right now, everybody's big happy family. And I did find it funny that right, Bo's now suddenly part of the creed, doesn't want to be there, doesn't want to be a part of it. Being told leave the helmet on, it just makes life easier for everybody. And she says, all right, fine. And I did think about it afterwards. Now that the children of the watch are her new family, the family portraits would be absolutely fantastic. They're all just standing there with helmets on, going, "Geez."
Yeah,
What do
and
you reckon?
like you said again, there were some cool looking ones and some dodgy looking ones as well.
Yeah, you do wonder, don't you? But didn't see any of the kids either. I thought wasn't looking for them, but I didn't see any of them.
Yeah,
So funnily enough, in this episode, at one end and the other end, that's all we saw of Din and hardly anything of Grogu. And as we've said multiple times on these episodes, Grogu is the cash cow of the series,
yeah,
right? And remember, this is the flagship show for Disney. It's the one that everybody watches, right? Both the fans and the general public. And what do they general public dial into? Grogu, right? Absolutely. Then suddenly, for whatever reason, this 1 hour episode, we go into the Mandalorian. Where was this going, dude? And it's like emulating a previous show. And a lot of people have said, oh, it's a poor man's Andor and all this sort of business. And they've all concluded that it didn't really live up to the that previous show's legacy. But what do you reckon?
Just before we move on, I thought there was something important because it was called the convent.
Yep.
Sorry,
Convent. No, that's where the nuns hang out,
that's
dude.
where
But
the
then you'd be
nuns
none the
live. But
wiser. Yeah.
yeah, what do you think she, Bo-Katan, is really doing it because she's got no one else and she's become she's found the way, or is she doing it purely because she's going to get followers and she's like, haha, this is because I think it left you with her. Maybe she is, or maybe she's just being opportunistic by sort of going along with this. Because remember, she said as soon as she wasn't waving the sword around, all the other Mandalorians just ran off and left her alone, kind of thing. And now she's got all these people around her, and she knows she knows where the mythosaur is, and she knows the legends, and she knows if she does that, she'll have all these people following her. So I thought it was a really interesting way to leave the episode where you don't know. Well, I didn't know if she was really thinking about following the way, or is it's just like, well, I've lost my castle, but I can get this whole group of super commandos following me just if I play along with it.
Yeah, she's biding her time. It's very, very clear. So she thought, okay, well, the dark sabers with Din, to get that, I've got to beat him in combat, which may or may not be possible. But she knows that the mythosaur is there,
Yep.
and it's just she's just arrived. So for all we know, she'll have dinner there, and the next day she'll go, all right, how do I plan to sort of shift everybody away from the armor back over to my side? And she's got the mythosaur buried in Mandalore to dig up effectively. So yes, is the answer to your question. She is
The,
definitely plotting and scheming and thinking
the
about
thing
how
is,
she can
Dags,
move forward.
the thing is, Dags, if you've been told, and this is legendary for generations about the dark saber, now it's sort of coming true, and you've been told about the mythosaur, and everyone goes, "Oh, they don't exist anymore," and she sees them, and then it's all falling into place. Maybe she is thinking, "Oh, gee, I am the chosen one. This is all for real."
Well, it's true, and I guess if she was to jump on the mythosaur, even the armor would have to say, "Mate, you're the bee's
Yeah,
knees," and
yeah,
the armor will say, "Okay, everybody, follow her. Just leave your helmet on. Don't take it off because it just upsets everyone." But
yeah.
yes, it's clearly playing the long game, and it's going to pay massive dividends for her. So yeah, at some point, and it'd be curious to see if there's a power struggle between her and the armorer. And they say, "Well, okay, follow me because I'm the rightful heiress of Mandalore, and I've got access to the mythosaur." The armorer is just a person, and to see which way there could even be a split or yet another civil war because, as we know, Mandalorians love fighting each other. So,
Yeah.
yes, very interesting stuff. I like this one from Christy. I like how the cash cow did nothing this week. He didn't having to have many close-ups, a couple here and there, and that was it. And most of the time, he was on the ship. So, how about
I,
that? The dollars have
I
just
thought
gone
when
tatas.
I thought when he was burbling and purring along with stuff, I know what his first words are going to be.
Oh.
I'll put money. His first words are going to be, "This is the way."
You never know. It certainly could be too. So, yes. So Anyway, so that was that side of the story, which was interesting, and it was all good and wonderful and whatever else.
Yeah.
But then we ended up on a completely different sub story, and it's funny because I've said this multiple times in this show, in our show, that this show caters to two audiences: the fans and the public. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the public dial into Grogu and all that sort of stuff. He gets the flick for like 40 something minutes, right? And we end up following a completely different story with characters we'd long since forgotten. So we end up on post-Imperial Coruscant, and it looks, and a few people sort of lost track on this one. It looks like a lot like the prequel trilogy version of Coruscant, which makes sense because when we saw it in Andor is when the Imperial occupation was taking place. So clearly it looked a little bit unhappy. Yeah. And for those who didn't twig, the government of the New Republic is not based on Coruscant now. They're actually based on Chandrilla. So I thought I'd just chuck that in for good measure. But I personally was like, oh my God, we're back to Coruscant. How grouse is this? So, dude, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I absolutely love this. This was going for all the political intrigue of Andor in an episode of The Mandalorian. And let's face it, Boba Fett lost 2 episodes to The Mandalorian. So I was quite happy for this to go across to Andor. Well, not Andor, but Andor-esque storytelling. I was impressed. Did you enjoy it?
I did, and it was almost like Din got a dose of his own medicine. He got effectively kicked off his own show, which I thought was kind of amusing, as you said, like what happened in the book of Boba Fett. And I was going to say something else I completely forgot. But yeah, it was good. It was interesting, but I don't know if it necessarily worked or whether this needed to be in this episode. There's a lot of discussions going on. Some of the people have said, some of the fans have said, if there's a big subplot regarding Pershing, why didn't this start in the first episode of the series, right? So they could have easily had, look, we had Din going to Navarro and Kalevala. They could have easily had cutaways back to Coruscant following this story rather than just lumping in as one big, huge chunk. So with the general public watching this, I don't know how long they got into it before they go, well, I've lost Grogu. I don't have no idea what's going on. I don't know who these people are. I'm now tuning out. I think it was a big risk for this series to do what they've done. For the fans, they'll dial into it, and obviously that's actually the case here. But the general public, I don't think they will, and I think it's not what I would have done. So, but yes, from visually, I loved it. I always loved Coruscant. I love seeing the images of that, and the Galaxy's Opera House was fantastic. And yes, it went from there.
Well, I was going to say that. I was going to ask you some stuff because you might know better than me as we go along. When it went to Coruscant, there was some I thought it was fantastic John Williams-esque music. It wasn't from the trilogy. Has that been used before? It kind of was very familiar, and I really liked it. And what you were saying as well, it was really great that they revisited like the Opera House and the landing bay and some of the other things we've seen before. And I was reading up how Coruscant didn't really change because of all the bigwigs lived there during the Imperial occupation. They did the best they could to not bomb it or make it hard because everyone was like living like fat cats there. And it was good to see that, you know, it's come and gone and it's still the same as it was, and we've always kind of known.
So regarding the music, I didn't notice it, but other people have. They said they're variations of themes that have been used previously. The sequence where you see Elia Kane walking up the red carpet, someone had said that's actually a shot-for-shot reproduction of what we saw in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, it was.
With Anakin Skywalker running in. So it's possible they've just used those background plates, digitally removed everybody and just put her in. I don't know. I haven't really sort of studied that hard. But it was good from a familiarity point of view to say, oh, okay, the Galaxy's Opera House, we saw it 40 years ago, or whatever it was in, 30 years ago, whatever it was in like Revenge of the Sith. Now we're seeing it again. So it's still there and it's still kicking on. So, yeah, but we've seen the Old Republic, we've seen it during the Imperial era, and now we're seeing it in the New Republic era, and they're all sort of vastly different from each other. Christy has said, if I want to watch another show, I would watch another show. I hate that they changed this whole style and story partway through. I hear you, Christy. I really do. I was really surprised that they've done this, and I'm not sure what the motivation was. What I think has happened is they've said, well, Din and Grogu are now with the Children of the Watch. They've got nothing to do, right? Their video game quest is over. And it's like, well, we're scratching our heads, and maybe it's possible. This is what I thought. I thought the writers of this show was looking across the corridor to the writers of the Andor show and go, what are you guys up to over there? And they go, oh, we're doing this, and we're doing this with Coruscant and this. And they go, that sounds grouse. Let's do that too, not realizing it's not really the right show to do it in. So, yes, I think it has the potential to alienate a core part of the audience, the money-paying part of the audience. So, because I imagine if you go to a person in the street and go, "What did you think of the episode of, The Mandalorian?" They're going to go, "Oh, I don't know. There's this dude running around with glasses, and there's a lady with a short haircut. I got no freaking idea. Just give me the kid." There you go. Gregor said, "I like Coruscant part, yeah, but it seemed odd, contrasting with the usual Mandalorian feel," which is, as we said, funnily enough, what happened with the Book of Boba Fett with the two Mandalorian episodes chucked in. Colin said, "Hopefully, otherwise we'll get the series some substance and not just have Din and Grogu flying around Adventure of the Week." And that's what we said last week, saying that Grogu needs his own show, right? Which has to be the Adventures of Grogu. Now they've taken a really dark turn in this episode, which is for the greater story. And I agree with Christy. Is it the right show to do it in? And I personally think the answer is no. So very, very cool. Have they run out of ideas? Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So it was definitely a jarring sort of change. But if you're a fan of the whole series and the backstory, you can dial into it. But yeah. So with that in mind, good old Pershing makes an appearance. We forgot about this guy from the last season. And it's like, move over Din. Pen Pershing is now in town, at least for today. And he's doing his whole big spiel about being a bad dude for the Empire, and now he wants to redeem himself and all this sort of stuff, and he's into cloning and all this information. And it's like, dude, I mean, it looked awesome. It's great. He's standing there and he's doing the big spiel, but what did you make of all this?
I thought it was very interesting because it isn't someone who would pack in an opera house. I wouldn't have thought someone talking about a genetics. Maybe it was some kind of scientific symposium. I thought it was really well acted. When I first saw it, I almost thought he looked like a CGI character and not so much an actor. But I thought it was really well acted because it was where you first see his tick. And I don't know if you've noticed this. When he gets nervous, he was touching his ear. Oh, you picked that up too.
Yeah.
So that's important because you see it come back a couple of times through the episode.
Yeah, this is because in the last episode of season 2, when Cara Dune fired a gun, it singed his ear, right? Yep. And I think it's like that reminding of a near-death experience. So that's how because you're right. When he did it the first time, you go, okay, he's got an earache. But then when he did it the second time, you go, okay, there's clearly something in this. And of course, in this particular thing, he's pushing his whole belief in cloning. And it's an interesting sort of argument to saying, we could create clones so we can help people from a medical point of view, which, funny enough, was very similar to the movie The Island, right? If you ever saw that. They clone a person so you can use their body parts to fix other people, the hosts. But, of course, does that mean the clone is just there to just rip bits out of when you need bits? So it's a very ethical sort of discussion that you go, well, hang on, it's not the same as what you think it would be. So anyway, clearly the New Republic said clones are out, and he's keen to sort of push it. So, yes, and he's got on his high horse because of it. But, yeah, very groovy.
That's the interesting thing where he's talking about outlawed technology and outlawed things, yet he's been given a podium to talk about it. And then all the sort of nobles or whatever come and welcome him and thank him and think it's great afterwards as well, which I thought was a bit, I guess, it was hypocrisy.
Yeah, I'll get to the shots of the guys in a sec. I think it was because he was willing to say, well, I work for the Empire. I've now been fixed up because there's a place they go to, a rejuvenation camp or whatever. And he's like, I'm now for the New Republic. I love the New Republic. And they're probably all thinking it's grouse that he's been shifted across, or maybe because of his cloning skills, but not because of that. So Christy's come up with a really good one. Chatting to someone at Zing, they were asking, who the hell were these people? Yeah, well, that's exactly right. So, and I must admit, it took me a while to work and go, this has gone in a completely different path. So it's not even like Grief Karga or any of those guys. It's actually someone we haven't seen for like a couple of years, effectively. And of course, Elia Kane came back. And of course, we only ever saw her with a hat on when she was working with Gideon. So it took me a while to work out who she was. I thought she's familiar, but I don't know who she is because I didn't watch the previously on part. But she's an interesting one. So we don't really know what her motivations are in this particular episode. But from the outset, it appears that she's keen to help our man Penn, not our man Din.
There was a couple of clues, and you might have picked them up. And I was watching with Tennille, and I said to her straight away, "She's evil," and I can tell you why as we go along. I don't know if you picked these up, but it is kind of the writers were really, really clever, and it is symbolism in what she's doing. But I'll tell you as we go along, if it might just all be in my head, but I think it's there. So it was. Sorry, it was good to see her. And she's just been in Ant-Man and Wasp as well. I was going, what is she from? What is she from? Trying to think Star Wars, and then it fooled me because I just seen that. So that spun me out a little bit too.
Very groovy. Now you were talking about the rich people, and this is a really good moment, right? It's the old saying, "The rich get richer," and this was an excellent
Yeah,
example of people who are so affluent they've got no idea what's going on around them, right? Oh, it
yeah,
was the guy even says, "Oh, yeah, it's the Empire, the Rebellion, the New Republic." It's all the same to him, right? When like you're that wealthy, living on a wealthy planet, you're oblivious to what's going on. And I really like this. And of course, this gets covered off again in the Last Jedi on Canto Bight, when everybody's in the casino and no one gives a rat's ass as to what's going on with the conflicts of the galaxy. I thought there was a really, really telling moment. And this guy said, "Oh, can you imagine being in the army?" And his wife says, "Oh, no, that was the Empire, dear. Oh, it's all the same to me." I thought, yeah, these are the kind of people you just love to hate, but they're the wealthy ones. And in the end, they can afford to just not give a shit. And I thought that was a really, really good moment.
I just hope we don't get a Hasbro box set of them, because that's the kind of the worst action figures ever. Like pompous old rich people, but they've done it before, you know.
Yes, they had stuck up rich dudes. But I thought that was good. And we saw that in Andor as well, right?
Yeah,
People who just don't care about what's going on. And that was set during the Imperial era. And of course, as I said, we see in the New Republic era as well. People are just flitting around doing their thing. So we end up in amnesty housing. So ex-Imperials all get booted off into housing commission flats. I thought that was actually very interesting. And good old
yeah,
Penn Pershing has just been dumped off here after his camp settlement. And of course, someone has picked up on, and I agree with this, we're seeing shades of THX1138. So we're not
yes,
using names anymore. We're using numbers. And I thought that was a bit rich. They've taken their names off them. Everyone dresses the same, and they do have the Imperial sort of look about them. The colors are drab, and of course, they have police robots running around Coruscant. But I don't
yeah.
know if you picked up on that. But when I said they've gone for the number thing, I thought that's a way of stripping someone of their identity. And I get the whole idea that you're trying to rehabilitate these people, but to take their names off them, I go, "Oi, that's a bit harsh."
I also thought, the people that deal with them are sort of, I guess, robots as well. And I was like, if you were an Imperial in this system, it would be really hard to integrate, because it isn't the best life.
Well, it depends on who you are and where you are. So we only get to see certain portions of it. And you are right. For some people, it doesn't end well. For other people, maybe not so much. Um, I like this. This is one of the rare occasions in this series, and I mean the first season, second season, this season, where you just have
Yeah,
a bunch of people who are not the main act cast just having a conversation. It is such
yeah,
a rare thing. We saw it heaps in Andor, saw it all over the place, right? But in this, it is such a different thing. And that's why I thought, oh, maybe these writers for this episode got the idea of the Andor guys. Whether it worked or not, I don't know. But these people are all part of the ex-imperial machine.
yeah.
Long live the New Republic. Whether they believe that or not is another thing. And I thought it was a good moment, but I don't know where it was going. So, and of course, all these
Yes,
guys, and of course, Elias on the right hand side, have all been working with numbers instead of names.
yeah.
And I thought, how did you find this?
I thought it was really good. I really like to see sort of just the average Joe and what they're doing, but there was a lot of stuff that was in the conversation. And this is where I first like, oh, she's bad. When they're talking about the Imperial biscuits?
Yeah, I'm going to get to the biscuits in a sec. So yeah, but yeah, go
Yeah.
on.
And he goes, I prefer the yellow ones. And she says, I prefer the red.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, fair call. Yeah, very
Yeah.
subtle actually. Speaking of that, apparently in the background conversation, Gideon seems to have gone walkies. So if you remember from the first episode, he'd been arrested by the New Republic, and they were interrogating or talking with him. And now there's dropping hints that he's disappeared,
Yeah.
gone walkies. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not, but it certainly dropped that hint. And of course, yeah, when they look at Gideon, oh, I didn't know you worked for him. So you can interpret that as like saying that guy was saying to Eli, oh, you're a bit of a meanie working for Gideon. But on the same
Yeah.
side, you might be thinking, geez, you really went places. So, open to interpretations. I like this one from Christy. The toast made me think of Hail Hydra. And of course, if you've been to a rehabilitation camp, of course, you're going to say, long live the New Republic, yay for the good guys. But I mean, maybe they're not actually believing that at all. So, and as we see with Elia later on, maybe that might be the case. So, I don't know. What do you reckon? So,
Yeah. I thought the whole conversation was interesting. I did think for, the New Republic trying to integrate people, I didn't think they were doing a very good job. I thought it would actually breed sedition and split off groups. And how do we get, the Empire back? Because this isn't the best thing.
Yeah, it's at face value. You can see, well, we can see what they're trying to do, and good on them for doing it. But are they going about it the right way? I don't know. And of course, even the guys on the table saying, well, the Empire would have done it differently. They didn't say they're going to do it worse. They just said they do it differently. And I think that was
Differently.
interesting. So, as always, there would be positives in some areas, negatives in others, and it just depends on the individual. Speaking of which, so we're talking about how this show's been emulating Andor, right? And it's like the Andor, the series that either fans loved or hated. And all of a sudden, this series is now copying that series because we're doing our own version of Cyril Khan's apartment. Right? Next up, we'll be seeing Grogu eating cereal. What do you reckon of that, dude?
I actually thought the same thing. I thought I actually liked that. I like how the Star Wars universe is familiar and it echoes stuff. So that's why I like this. I was like, oh, they're doing Andor for people who liked Andor and the Mandalorian. So I was happy with that. So
I was spun out. He's sitting on the bed looking at like effectively a news broadcast about how Coruscant's this and Coruscant's that. And I was thinking, okay, you would never have seen a scene like this in the first or second season season of this show. So it is
yeah,
like we're watching something completely different. Now, you talk about the biscuits, right? I looked at this, I thought, mate, Arnott's have got to get on board and got to create those because they are awesome. And as was pointed out to me, is lucky they're not green because when they're green, they're made of people. But, don't worry about that because the good news is, as you know, the dark side has cookies.
I think those biscuits already exist. I think they're served on Qantas flights to plebs who can't afford anything else. I did think it was nice. The box they came in was obviously an Imperial box. We've seen that kind of thing in Star Wars before.
I loved it. They've even got the Imperial logo on the biscuits and everything. So they
Yeah,
couldn't why would you even do that? If you're just going to put biscuits in a bag, you don't need to put the Imperial logo on them. This is during the Empire era to say, oh, it's part of their Imperial biscuits. It's not like the Anzac biscuits had friggin' the Anzac logo on it or anything. So, but
yeah.
it looked awesome. I thought, oh, I've got to get me some of those to put in the collection.
Now, this is the second hint that she was bad because food used as temptation is always a bad thing from the Bible and the apple with Adam and Eve, right through to you've got the Turkish delights with the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
It's always one of those things to tempt people, to do something bad. And as soon as he picked them up in biscuits and they're what he's wanted, I'm like, oh yeah, she's a bad guy.
Yeah, I did find it funny. You hear the doorbell ring. He gets to the door and she's not there. It's like, man, how far did she have to run just to get out of the way? But yeah, you are right. If you're on the Qantas flight, because I look at Qantas biscuits, as you said, it's like, I want the red ones. So, so very interesting. So yes, the biscuits, absolutely love it. I've got to have some of those. So we end up back with more Andor imagery. So we're now in an office building. And I thought, mate, if you had said 2 years ago, oh yeah, the Mandalorian, we'll see inside of an office building one day. There's no people say, no, you won't. Who would show that? But sure enough, here it is. And it's clearly a much smaller scale than we've seen in Andor. And I thought that's okay, pretty gribby. And good old Pershing, just like Cyril Khan, is stuck in a dead end job. And as we discussed earlier, if you look at the computer screen up there, that's definitely a lot more groovier than what we saw in Andor. But the two shows are mirroring each other quite significantly. What do you reckon?
Well, the other thing that I thought was sad for him, I don't know if you picked up on his job, but they were getting rid of redundant Imperial, I don't know what they were, hard drives or whatever, and replacing them with new ones. And I was actually thinking that's really how he feels himself, because he's Imperial and has to change from what he was doing to something new. And it was sort of mirrored in the job that he was doing, where they were bringing all these data wafers or whatever and get rid of the Imperial ones and upgrading them to New Republic ones.
Well, that's what was happening here. So this is sort of slightly out of sync with the show. But yeah, he's getting they're destroying Imperial technology, which he said is perfectly in working order, and he was a bit distressed by that. But the guy on the right, whoever that is, actually makes a point of saying they're decommissioning the Alliance fleet as well. I go, well, that's interesting. So they're knocking back everything. But yeah, so this is where you can see Pershing is clearly torn between his previous life and what he's doing now, and knowing fully well that what they're destroying could actually be used for good. And of course, good is a point of view, if you will. I think even the Emperor says that, or Palpatine says that in Revenge of the Sith. So yeah, it's all about perspective. But yeah, clearly he's a bit of a torn guy. But I thought that was quite interesting. And the whole office scene is like so far removed from what we would have seen in previous Mandalorian episodes. It's not. It's insane. So, but it's good.
I wonder if his uncle poured in a favor to get him to work there.
Absolutely fantastic. Now, Colin was saying he's hoping they'll produce Imperial iced Vobos, but they haven't done that because Arnott's got to make the biscuits, and that now means that Streets have got to make the ice creams. What the hell's the deal with these things, dude?
Well, this is the second one where you see he's got a purple one and she
Yeah,
again has got a red
the
one. And
red
I
one.
was like, oh, they're really signposting she's Imperial here. That's the next thing I noticed. But I did think we are gonna get these lollies. They're gonna have those sort of glow sticks things in the inside, and they're gonna be Mandalorian icicles or something.
I love that they are clearly so fake. You know, he's eating nothing at all, right? It's like, oh, it's like they couldn't even use normal ice creams. They got a good color and they got lights in it. Who puts a light inside an ice cream for crying out loud? It's like,
Well, they've done Mandalorian custard. They're gonna do this for sure. I bet they are.
unbelievable.
You'll
I
be
just
able to
laughed.
get it. You'll be able to get it at Galaxy's Edge for $20 an ice cream for
Yeah,
the.
no, and you'll find a little kid will eat it and eat the battery inside, and it'll just be a massive like lawsuits everywhere. But I looked at this and I just thought, oh my god, unbelievable. Anyway, so it's mentioned here that Coruscant has 1 trillion residents, and you go, Mike, that is a lot of people in this show. But it kind of works when I'll show you later on as to the numbers how it works. You can fit that many people on the planet if you assume that Coruscant is the same size as Earth. Anyway, so with Pershing, quite simply, you can't take the science out of the scientists, right? And of course, Kane is aware of this, as mentioned there. And you've got to remember, and this is an interesting thing about this episode, Pershing has come across as a pleasant guy. He's trying to do the right thing, and yay, the New Republic and all sorts of stuff. But he's done a lot of bad things getting to where he is now. He was trying to get Grogu's blood and all this sort of business, and who knows what else other shifty stuff he's been up to in the name of science. So even though he meant to be a sympathetic character, really, you got to say, well, dude, you get whatever's coming to you. So he's you can't.
You
It's
have
the sin
got
of
to
the past, dude. You just can't get rid of it.
You have got to remember he is a sympathetic character though, because he was doing it, but he didn't do it to Grogu when he had the chance. Do you remember? He actually was gonna take the genetic sample or something, and they're like, no, don't do it. And he held up and he didn't do it. So that's why I thought he was more of a sympathetic good guy, and I was really interested to see how this episode played out.
Yeah, that's I'm doing it in the name of science, and as you're ripping into people and doing horrible things to them, and going, oh, I don't know. So you might have a moment of, I've got a conscious moment. It's like, oh, okay, I won't take the blood out of Grogu, but it doesn't mean that he's previously, if he's big into the cloning thing, who knows what he's been up to. So you can, it can sort of be emulated along with real life figures of history that have done terrible things for what they thought was the right reason, and it wasn't the right reason at all. But anyway, so. Someone did point out, so don't forget, Pershing effectively was a bad guy. So, yeah.
Well, I did think this was the episode where she was testing him to see would he come back and do this, and he was definitely on the I do science for the good of whatever, the Empire or the New Republic. I'm doing it for good, and I think that's what screwed him in the end, really.
Yeah, certainly could be. This I really liked. So it's the peak of you, mate. Now this actually harks right back to a Ralph McQuarrie picture of Coruscant going right back in the early days of Return of the Jedi, I think it was. And they actually put this in the special edition of the Specky Eddie, as I call it, of Return of the Jedi back in 1997, but it only just got named recently in a High Republic novel a couple of years ago, and they've put it into the episode here. I love this, and it's the equivalent of the peak of Everest, right? So if you're trying to wrap your brain around that, to say they've built this city so high up, it's actually gone to Everest and it's around the world. And that's the reason why, and I found this out when I did some research, the ground level is level 5,216, right? And that just goes to show how deep the city goes around the world. So no wonder you can put 1 trillion people in there. It's like, wow. But this was really cool that they did this. Yeah, I thought it was great.
This is good. I think it has appeared once before in the Clone Wars as well, hasn't it? Because it was Celine and Obi-Wan met in front of that at one episode.
They may have shown it, but they didn't name it. It hadn't been named at that point.
Yeah. So, it was just from the artwork. It's good how they all tied together, I think.
Yeah. As I said, not everyone has the strength to say no to the Empire. You would find, and I think even Pershing says that when he had the opportunity to work in these sort of laboratories, remember he's on the Star Destroyer, I was like, oh my God, it was like a dream come true. And I guess if you're given everything that you've ever wanted, ethics can sometimes go out the window a little bit. So it's it's worth noting he did work for the bad guys. He may have turned towards the end, but it doesn't mean he was a good guy the whole way along. So, yeah. But we never got to see it.
I don't even have the strength to say no to CCs. So if I was working for the Empire, I'd probably turn Grogu into a smoothie if that's what the Emperor had asked for.
Squeeze the midi-chlorians out of him, absolutely. As some people have noted, we're now seeing buildings with the New Republic logo instead of the Imperial logo. And, of course, the change of government will impact people different ways. And then we saw this in Andor as well, because you had Mon Mothma and her husband Perrin. Perrin was having a great time under the Imperial era, as a lot of people were, as the rich people were, as we saw earlier. Change of government, sure, it benefits a lot of cultures and organizations and planets, but for some people, nothing changes. But it was interesting to note that they are putting the New Republic logo everywhere. So they've just chiseled off the Imperial one and put the New Republic logo in its place.
That picture just proves to me every planet has a Crown Casino, actually.
Well, I tell you what, you're not wrong. And just quickly, I thought this was interesting. There are trees on Coruscant. Now, in Monument Plaza, which is where the Umate thing is, there are trees there. But there's trees everywhere in this. And I think that's the first time we've seen trees other than in the Jedi Temple on the planet. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't just sort of put that in.
I think you're probably right. I don't remember seeing trees on Coruscant either.
Yeah, it wasn't just like a twig or a weed. It's actually trees all over the place. I go, oh, okay. Unless it was done intentionally. It's like, okay, this is Amnesty House. Let's make it a bit more greener and prettier. But you would have thought they wouldn't have had the ability to do it. And as we discussed, so what's his name? Pershing is about to go and steal some stuff from the Imperial base. As he looks in the mirror, breaking the rules for the greater good, as we were discussing this a few minutes ago, it's like you can convince yourself of anything. A person will do anything bad if they think they're doing it for the right reasons. And that's clearly what he thinks. So only time will tell as to whether that will be the case or not. So, but yeah, the guy's a tad conflicted. As we saw, he did not want to do this, but he's realized his dead-end job is not getting him anywhere. Good technology is being destroyed, and his hand is being forced.
It didn't take very much to swing him round either. It was a very weak argument to sort of say, hey, if you're doing it for good, we can break the rules. And he was like, yep, okay. I did think it was interesting that because of the New Republic's neglect by... Like, he is obviously a high-level prisoner and someone very important. By giving him a social worker, I guess, robot, that really can't pick up on inflection or questions when he says, if for the good to the Republic, that outweighs everything. And the robot's like, absolutely. Where if it was a real person who was having a discussion, they wouldn't have done that. And they would have realized he was just being annoyed by the questioning, So I did think that was interesting, that it didn't take very much for him to force his hand and go back to, okay, let's get a genetics lab.
Yeah. And you can clearly see, other than how things turn out, had he been able to keep his equipment, who knows what path he would have gone down, all the time thinking, I'm doing this for the greater good of the New Republic. But in the end, it's really to serve your own benefit. They get on the train.
So I think his mistake is telling her that he is doing it for the good of the New Republic and wants to help the New Republic. I mean, because ultimately that's his undoing.
Yeah. So we get on the train sequence. Some people say the imagery was great, and I love the fact he was looking out the windows, because if I had been on that train, I would have been doing exactly the same thing. Some people thought the sequence is a tad too long, and I tended to agree with them. And it was interesting. We got on board, and there was this big ass dude here, and I had to look at the subtitles. I couldn't. What the hell does she say to this guy? Torns days, am I right? And I go, what the hell is that? And I discovered later on that a Torns day is actually a day of the week. And it's the Galaxy Far, Far Away version of Hump Day, which is a Wednesday here. And it turns out in the Galaxy Far, Far Away, there's only 5 days in the working week. And that happens to be these days. So Prime Day, Syntax Day, Torns Day, which is like we just said, Zelly Day, and Bendu Day. So there you go, nerds. One for the trivia quizzes down the future. So there you go. 5 days of the working week in the Galactic Standard Calendar. Wackadoo.
Well, you got me on that one, because I absolutely did not know what they were talking about when they said that.
I mean, she just talks to him, the guy, and the thing just reacts. And I go, what? I've never had to put subtitles on before, but this time I did. I go, what the hell did he say? I go, what the hell's the deal with that? So, and I thought, if it had been Mondays, right, because everybody hates Mondays, but it's the middle of the week, so it was just a weird line. Yeah. So anyway, not to worry. So we get to the Imperial shipyard, and I got to say, right, I mean, they're inoperable, but they've still got internal power. You got to remember, an Imperial Star Destroyer is 1.6 kilometers long, right? That would be awesome to see up close, right? Yes. And I don't think the screen did it justice. I mean, I think they needed to have a pan across or something, because the thing is gigantic. And it was good. It's funny, just like, where do you park your Star Destroyer? Well, just plonk it down here and we're good to go.
Well, is this this? I was thinking this, but I don't know, because Coruscant's so big. Is this the same area of Coruscant where, in the Phantom Menace, Darth Maul and Darth Sidious meet, and then later where Count Dooku lands? Is it like an inherently disused evil area of Coruscant?
No, where they met in those previous areas was called the Works. I think
Yeah,
it was more like the industrial side of Coruscant. It's funny, I should know this. And that's the reason why everything looked red. So, so yeah, that's like you got. It's a bit like in real life here, where you got industrial parts of a city, and you got the affluent parts, and you got the outer suburban parts, and the sports parts, and whatever. Roughly the
yeah.
same sort of thing. So this would have been whatever shipyards they've got. So it's the equivalent of the docklands or a docking area, but on a much bigger scale. So the Works would be somewhere else. So, as I
Okay.
would interpret it. So, very groovy stuff. Oh, yeah. And you are right. Yes, they use the Mikey system. Yeah, where they got to swipe the thing and get to the gates and all that. It's like, oh, my goodness gracious.
I did think it was funny. We got the tickets, please, call back from Last Crusade, and the ships
Your
were
ticket.
that the ships were coupled together by like the magnetic or the pod racer type
I
magnetic
laughed.
things.
They jump. I mean, how often do you see this in the movies? They jump from carriage to carriage. They get out the door and he goes, "It's the end of the train." I go, "No shit, Sherlock. What gave you that idea?" Oh my goodness gracious me! Had to laugh, but yeah, it was a good sequence, but it was a bit dumb at the same time. And I thought when they jump off the train, it's still going pretty quick. I thought at the very least he's going to break his glasses, but no, they just get up and it's like, mate, we're all cooking on gas. So yeah,
So
anyway.
that was another thing. Was that pre-planned? She knew where to jump because there was like inflatable, like I guess stuntman things to land on, or was that just totally random?
I would have thought it was totally random because you can't practice that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
imagine he had have snapped his neck or whatever, and she would have gone, "Well, that kind of screwed the bloody plan." All they had to do is just get into. Once they got into the ship, clearly the whole thing was a setup. But yeah, to say, "Oh, part of the plan is we're going to jump off the train." He's never done it before. Who knows what's going to happen? So the risk is pretty high. So I would have thought, no, it wasn't pre-planned at all. They get into the Imperial Star Destroyer. Luckily, they don't have to go up 10,000 levels to get to it. And of course, they get into the laboratory thing. And everybody's asking, what is the deal? Why is this happening the way it is? And I put two and two together on this one. This is my theory, is that she has set all this up because she wants him to grab all the necessary items to start cloning, right? So as he said, he only needs a few things to start, but she would not have known what those items were. So she needed him to grab them. He gets his container, chucks them all in, right? Now, of course, you can ask yourself, why would she do that? What's the end game? And there's all these theories going around as to if she's still working for the Imperials. It's not really the Empire anymore. Is she involved with what will come later on, 30 years later, or was it 25 years later, with the whole Palpatine thing and the Sith fleet and the Strand cast? And if so, that's a real interesting sort of seed to plant now for something that won't occur for another 25 years. I don't know what you thought of it, but
Well, I can tell you now. Yes, she is, because in the first series of the Mandalorian, where they had this guy on about cloning, they played Snoke's theme. So
yeah,
it is obviously leading into cloning Palpatine, bringing forward Snoke as sort of a puppet politician or something, and bringing back the Emperor and the Empire. So I actually think this would be really good if they could do the backstory for episode 7, 8, and 9. So when you go and see them again, there's actually all this story that we didn't know when we watched them. It might actually make those movies play better.
it's tricky, isn't it? It's an interesting one whether people will really care or not as to how that all came about. Because in the Star Wars universe, the Kaminoans, the guys from Kamino, they're pretty much all gone effectively.
Yeah.
So they say, okay, who's left? Oh, Pershing's he's the local cloning guy, and he actually made reference to the Kaminoans in this. So maybe they said, well, we need the stuff. We don't want the guy, but we just need the stuff, but we don't know what stuff to get. So maybe that was part of the whole plan. It's a bit of a cockeyed way of going around it, especially when you get to this bit, right? When Pershing gets arrested by the New Republic, and it's like, okay, and she just picks up the container and wanders off with it, right? And so, yeah, it's pretty clear that she's still working for somebody on the Imperial side of things, but the New Republic clearly trusts her as well. So she must have got in favor with them, but her bigger plan is to help the Imperial remnant or whatever. So, but yeah, ultimately she does pick up the container and wanders off, and we assume she doesn't give it back. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I'm saying I don't know if I'll be right. I'm saying she's working for Gideon. Gideon's working on the Imperial cloning program to bring back the Emperor. They need DNA that has chlorites because they haven't got like the actual Emperor's DNA. So they need, a Jedi or the Grogu or something like that. And you saw in his talk, he was talking about joining two different strands of DNA together to get the best out of the both of them. So if they have like human DNA and they can put Grogu metachlorites in, that might be a suitable vessel for the Emperor to come back.
It's an interesting point. Gregor said about the train thing. She did say she'd done this before. That's true. She did. You would have assumed she just would have got off at the station rather than jumping off to get the biscuits. But by the same token, if this whole thing was a setup, maybe she didn't have to go to the ship before, and she was able to get the biscuits brought to her because she knew she was setting Pershing up. So you can take it from two different perspectives, I suppose. But yeah, you are right, though. She did say she had done it before. Interesting. It was kind of a bit weird and a bit bizarre at the same time. Now, this was a funny moment, right? It's funny, but it's not funny, right? They stick Pershing on Mind Flayer grid. He goes, "This is a Mind Flayer," and the Mon Calamari dude is, "No, it's not. It's all right. This isn't the Empire." So what? Unbelievable. And then he has the gall to say to the Mon Cal guy, "But he was a trap." Jeez.
I know. You knew this. You knew this as soon as he was on that, and it's called the Mind Flayer. You know that's not going to end well, is it?
Okay, it's okay. We put it on low voltage. It's good to make you feel better. I've done it to myself, and it's great. I got to see flowers and pretty trees and all sort of stuff. What is this rubbish? And of course, this confirms that the New Republic are still doing questionable things to people. It's all for the right. Remember what we said earlier? It's all for the right reasons, but is it? Ethically, it's not right. And they said, it's okay, we'll put it on a low dose. You'll be cooking on gas, mate. Don't you worry about anything. It'll turn you back to being a good guy. Oh, classic stuff. What do you reckon?
Well, we know from, I guess, The Force Awakens that that's what they do to kids to get them to be stormtroopers. They, put them in these machines and they alter their thinking. And maybe this is the beginning of that. I don't know if the Empire actually did that or that was just a drafting system to get them. But we know for sure in The Force Awakens, they show the kids that are hooked up to the machines. They're not like the Mind Flayer, but that could be the beginning of that technology. And again, there's no way you'd get me in one of those machines.
No.
I'd be struggling. Even if you thought it was good, I'm like, no, nothing to alter the mind, even if I'm going to see pretty flowers and things. I've seen Soylent Green.
Yeah, that's actually said earlier. Exactly right. So yeah, you imagine that. Yeah, the Moncal guy said, "I did it to myself. It's all good." It's like, yeah, no, you didn't do. But yeah, and some people have asked us, so why would the New Republic still allow equipment like this to be around? Because clearly it can be misused, and fun enough, that's exactly what happens. But yeah, we're doing it for the right reasons. It's all good. What could possibly go wrong? And of course, it's just got bad news written all over it. So yes. Very good. You would taking the tools from, this is what Ad said, a random science lab would taking the screwdriver and thinking you can fix a hyperdrive motivator. Well, yeah, but I mean, if you pick the right stuff, maybe, and there's no instruction sheet, so wouldn't it be funny if Elia came, they said, this is what he took, and they have a look and go, it's like a Lego set without the instructions. They go, well, what do we do with it? You have to assume they've got their own people, so... Yeah.
Here's another hypothetical. If she'd been talking to him and he hadn't said, I want to do this for the good of everyone, and said, oh, gee, I wish the Empire was back and I could finish off my experiment, do you think he'd still end up in the Mind Flayer, or she'd go? And because the whole thing with it being called the convent, sorry, I'm having trouble with that word. It's a hard habit.
It's a hard habit to break.
The convert. I thought they were trying to make this guy the convert, to the First Order, or it's going to be. But they did this in the middle, and then they went back, and it was obviously Bo-Katan was the convert.
True. Sorry about it. It's all good. So the important thing is, and this is the twist at the end of the show, right, is that she cranks the thing up to Spinal Tap 11, right? And you're going to ask yourself, well, why? And the only thing you can think of is that she's seeking revenge because Pershing was the one who dobbed Gideon's ship in to Din and Boba and all those guys, right? And that's the reason why they got attacked and Gideon got captured and all the rest of it. So it's definitely implying and suggesting that she is loyal to Gideon and is annoyed that he got arrested and Pershing was responsible for it. And that's the reason why she's sitting there chowing down on a biscuit. So that's how I interpreted that. She's just getting her own back for what he did. It's a long way of going about it. And you are right, Adzi, simple assassination would have been easier to just keep him quiet. But maybe because he's part of the New Republic system, she can't just knock him off and say, oh, he was an industrial accident. So she'll screw his mind and they'll say it's just the way it's happened. But as to what happens after this is anybody's guess. It's like, where we go? Oh, I don't know.
But here's the question. Is he actually now a drooling imbecile, or has he been 100% converted to the cause? They don't actually say.
Yeah.
Like he could have had like settings 1 and 2 just give you some happy thoughts. Settings 10 and you are a zealot for the Empire again or something. I don't know.
And I don't know what they're going to do. Like next episode, will they cover this story off, or they just forget all about it? Do people even care? That's it's a tricky one. I don't know, and that's the hard part of this entire series is to say, well, where they go in this, is it necessary to do it here? And I really don't know the answer to that question. Before I go any further, that's the end of my slides. Christy, can you give me your crimson yawns, please, about this episode? More yawns, the worse it was. The less yawns, the better it was. And just quickly before we get our summary of what we thought of the episode, don't forget, kids, if you haven't done so already, because it's right on 9 o'clock. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out all the Sci-Fi Zone socials, the YouTubes and Twitches and and Instagrams and whatever else. And, of course, for all your Mandalorian collectibles. Aaron Storr, Mr. Aaron, very, very quickly, what do you got to say about your shop?
Yep, if you want the box set of George Lucas and snobby bureaucrats, we haven't got that one, but we've got cool figures. We've got a lot of Star Wars stuff at the moment. I think I mentioned last week we had a big collection of the vintage collection come through, and we've had a lot of stuff right back from the 96 line again, with different waves right up to Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith. So we've really got a lot of Star Wars stuff in at the moment for anyone who's looking to plug holes in their collection.
Excellent. I love on the Mind Flayer. Yeah, they turned it up to the Mariah Carey Christmas album. Yeah, that would just about do it. You can put in on your own sound effects. Say, but he's enjoying it. I mean, he doesn't realize he's getting shish kebabbed. He's not like he's screaming and carrying on. It's not going through the Andor sequence. It's he's just sitting there and it's just all happening. So, in regards to what Christy thought of it, and as we know, we love Christy's thoughts and views on these entire things. She has gone for the full 7 yawns, which is the equivalent of 3 out of 10. How about that? And as she said before, if you want a different style of story, she would watch it. I totally agree with you. So, yes, I don't think it's going to rate for a lot of people their most favorite episode, but other people have said they loved it. But hang on, just quickly. A lot of people said they thought it was the best thing they've seen, but of course, Din and Grogu have been shafted out of it effectively. So make of that what you will. Anyway, sorry, dude.
I'm in the boat of I loved it. I would probably give it an 8 out of 10.
I'm not sure. I was looking through the eyes of the general public, and as a fan, I got it, and it was all good and groovy. It was, to me, a poor man's or poor person's Andor, just not as intense. But I saw where they were going with it, and I was intrigued. But I was looking because I was watching with my other half, and she just was lost. It's like, where's the kid? Bring the kid back. He's not barely even in it. So I liked it, but I'm lost. I'm not sure what they're doing, and I totally agree with Christy. I don't know if what they're doing is the right thing. Yeah, exactly right. Oh, yeah, you could put the setting to 10 on watching the Star Wars Holiday Special. Oh, I love it. Absolutely wonderful. I'm intrigued to see what they do next week. They'll either do one or two things: continue the storyline, and we find out what happens to Pershing and where Elia goes with her cloning technology, or they just forget all about it. And we go back to the children on the watch, and they're all sitting in their cave doing kumbaya sessions with their helmets on. I don't know. Intriguing.
I think to balance for this episode, it's going to be the adventures of Grogu for 45 minutes next week.
Yeah, well, they kind of have to put the kid back in. He's the cash cow, right? And we've said that multiple times. I will always say he's the cash. He's what brings the money in for the fans, all right? And if he's not in it, then the audience is going to leave in droves. Especially as Christy said earlier that she spoke to a person in the store and they had no idea what was going on. It's dangerous, dangerous stuff. Especially the flagship show. You can't tinker with that. You've seen the formula for the past 2 seasons. It's been a winner, chicken dinner. Now they're making a change, so it's like, oh, it's a risk. Big risk. It won't get more fans watching the show, as in like Star Wars fans watching the show, because they're already watching the show, but it can make fans leave the show. All right? That's critical. So you're not gaining an audience, you're losing an audience. So anyway, very good.
I think the one thing we can all agree was, last week's Picard was good.
Absolutely. And I've got to say, regarding Mandalorian episodes, last week's Mandalorian was, I think, better than this one. So anyway, we'll see where it all goes. It's all very exciting. The next episode's out in a couple of days' time. Be sure to check it out. It's very, very exciting. And, of course, come back next Monday to see what we thought of it. So I hope you've enjoyed our review. Sorry we had to rush through it. There was just so much we could have covered off in detail that we would have gone for like nearly an hour and a half, 2 hours. I kind of can't do that. So
yeah.
Any final words before we go, Mr. Aaron?
No, I'm just really interested to see where they go next week because it's hard to even guess.
Yeah, and if you get lost, just rewatch the episode of The Convent, because otherwise you'll be none the wiser. Leave you to it, guys. Have a good one. Party hard and rock on. Catch you guys.
Have a good night. See you.
Ta-da. Bye-bye.